Good afternoon. Thank you guys for coming out. Thanks for having us. My name is John Murillo. This is Marcus Jackson, and this is Randall Horton. And we're 3/4 of the poetry collective called the Symphony. Our other member, Dwayne couldn't make it here this afternoon, but we're going to try to hold things down as best we can. We're going to be reading some of our own poems, some poems from Etheridge Knight. It's part of a program we do called The House that Etheridge Built. It's part tribute, part homage, I guess. What we do is we go around the country. We tour colleges, universities, sometimes penal institutions, community workshops, and we try to just take Etheridge's work out into the world. Right? Etheridge was a poet, just a little historical background. He served in the Korean War, and while he was over there, he got a shrapnel wound. And because of this wound, he ended up becoming addicted to painkillers. And this addiction actually forced him into a brief life of crime for which he was in prison. So he served some time in prison. And it was in prison where he started to write poetry, some of the greatest poetry that's been written on this continent, at least in our opinion. He's one of the, I think, underappreciated poetic geniuses of American poetry. So what we try to do, we try to go and just share his work with people. And he's also a poet who influenced each of us in different ways. So what we're going to do today, we're going to read some of his work, some of our own work, and try to just make that connection for you guys. And maybe at the end of this all, if you have some questions about poetry, about process, about Etheridge, or about ourselves, you'll ask them. Sound good? Sound good? Yeah. Okay. All right. So Randall's going to start it off.
Yeah. First of all, just let me tell you a little bit about my relationship with Etheridge, and it's always interesting how we have relationship with writers that we don't know. I never met Etheridge. However, I can remember clearly when I was going back to school, after having been incarcerated for 5 years, returned back to school, and I wanted to be a writer, and I was writing poetry, and so I ended up in this workshop at Howard University run by a poet named Tony Medina. And one day we was doing a workshop. He came in with all of these books, and he passed the books around to students, and he turned them to different poems, and he asked us to read them, sort of create like this collage of voices. But it was real interesting. The poem and the book that he gave me was Etheridge Knight, and I read The Idea of Ancestry, and so from that point on, I was hooked because one, I found a poet that sort of could relate to some of the things that I was going through. And he was writing, and he wrote about them in very interesting ways, and I had never seen that. And I was struggling with, my own poetry and my own voice, and so he sort of gave me that confidence. But what I really take most from Etheridge is his whole idea of love, which is very interesting. We can deal with love in a lot of ways, but I think that he does it in a very interesting way. And I want to read a poem that he wrote called "As You Leave Me," and then I'll read one that was sort of influenced by this poem, okay? As you leave me. Shiny record albums scatter over the living room floor, reflecting light from the lamp, sharp reflections that hurt. My eyes as I watch you, squatting among the platters, the beer foam making mustaches on your lips. And two, the shadows on your cheeks from your long lashes fascinate me, almost as much as the dimples in your cheeks, your arms, and your legs. You hum along with Mathis. How you love Mathis, with his burnished hair and quicksilver voice that dances among the stars and whirls through canyons like windblown snow. Sometimes I think that Mathis could take you from me if you could be complete without me. I glance at my watch. It is now time. You rise silently into the bedroom and the paint. On the lips red, on the eyes black, and I lean in the doorway and smoke and see you grow old before my eyes and smoke. Why do you chatter while you dress and smile while you grab your large leather purse? Don't you know that when you leave me, I walk to the window and watch you and light a reefer as I watch you, and I die as I watch you disappear in the dark streets to whistle and smile at the Johns. And this is called when winter is a transitional state. From Iron Gate, to ice-covered sidewalk. It has been a difficult winter, I reflect. Watching from third floor bay windows into unforgiving nighttime, you stroll, wrestle, Tom, and for $1 bill, I would give the world to you. Don't you believe love is never adequate? Baby, this city got us, daily struggling to survive the madness. At the edge of a crumbled cliff, I stand ready, and if you gave it all up now, I would leap, or say, baby girl, can I be your good thing, man? For more than 10 minutes, I want to linger patiently in the FM of your snow white static. An emergency broadcast escorting you away. If it means goodbye, please don't. My red boot walk of intrigue, go. Understanding, I sip this bourbon and lament. Goodbye to you hustle, I long for myself always.
That was sexy. That was dope. One of the reasons that I love Etheridge so much is that, you know, there are certain writers, you read them, and they give you certain permissions, right? For instance, Willie Perdomo is a writer who, in writing about his Spanish Harlem upbringing, he gave me permission to write about my own neighborhood, you know, that I grew up in LA. One of the permissions that Etheridge gives me is the permission to be vulnerable, right? I think as a black man, you know, we're taught to assume certain stances, yeah? So here's Etheridge, somebody who's served in a war, who's been to prison, but he still allows himself that vulnerability, allows himself not to be soft, but to be open, right? And it can, you know, take the form, you know, of romantic relationships, like the one that Randall was reading about, or even the relationship between father and son. You know, I think often young men coming up, that tends to be a contentious relationship, right? And it's one that I think for some it's kind of hard to look into. So the poem of Etheridge that I'm going to read is called "The Bones of My Father," and then I'll read one of my own as well. It's the 3 parts. 1. There are no dry bones here in this valley. The skull of my father grins at the Mississippi moon from the bottom of the Tallahatchie. The bones of my father are buried in the mud of these creeks and brooks that twist and flow their secrets to the sea. But the wind sings to me. Here the sun speaks to me of the dry bones of my father. 2. There are no dry bones in the northern valleys. In the Harlem alleys, young black men with knees bent nod on the stoops of the tenements and dream of the dry bones of my father. And young white long hairs who flee their homes and bend their minds and sing their songs of brotherhood and no more wars are searching for my father's bones. 3. There are no dry bones here. We hide from the sun, no more do we take the long straight strides. Our steps have been shaped by the cages that kept us. We glide sideways like crabs across the sand. We perch on green lilies, we search beneath white rocks. There are no dry bones here. The skull of my father grins at the Mississippi moon from the bottom of the Tallahatchie. And then here's my poem. It's called Trouble Man, which takes its title from a song by Marvin Gaye. And I didn't really realize how Etheridge had informed this. I didn't realize that he had, because I thought that my sole muse for the song was Marvin Gaye. But there's something, I think, in the experience of black men in this country that transcends genre and medium, yeah? So Marvin Gaye's song is not dissimilar from Etheridge Knight's song, or mine, or Marcus's, or Randall's, or Dwayne's. It's called Trouble Man. And there's bones in that poem. This poem has a bone in the first line. So that kind of relates to, but not really. All right, Trouble Man. It's the bone of a question caught in your throat, pre-dawn sighs of the day's first traffic, shoulders like fists under your skin. Say it's raining this morning, you just left a woman's blue musk and duvet to find devil knows what in the world. Your wet collar, too thin jacket, no match for pissed off sky gods. And say this car pulls near. Plastic bag for passenger side window, trading rain for music, Marvin Gaye. And maybe you know this song. How long since a man you called father troubled the hi-fi, smoldering Newport in hand, and ran this record under a needle? How long since a man's broken falsetto colored every hour indigo? Years since he drifted, dreaming into rice fields, stammered cracked Viet Cong, gunboats and helicopters swirling in his head. Years since his own long walks, silent returns, and Marvin's many voices his only salve. He came up harder than you know, your father. Didn't make it by the rules. Your father came up hard, didn't get to make no rules. Graying beard, calloused hands, fingernails thick as nickels, you were the boy who became that man without meaning to. And know now, a man's life is never measured in beats, but beatdowns. Not line breaks, just breaks. You hear Marvin fade down the avenue and it caresses you like a brick. Your father, Marvin, and a million men just like them have already moaned every book you will ever write. This you know, baby. This you know.
I cannot, since we're fresh off of election season, I can't help but read this poem by Etheridge that originally appears in his stunning collection, Belly Song. It's called, and I think it really does a great job of not only showing his razor sharp skills of observation to look below the surface, which every poet needs, his bravery to make an overt political statement. It's called On Watching Politicians Perform at Martin Luther King's Funeral. Hypocrites shed tears like shiny snake skins, words rolling through the electric air. The scent of flowers mingles with Jack Daniels and Cuddy Sark. The last snakeskin slithers to the floor where black Baptist feet have danced in ecstasy. They turn away to begin again. Manicured fingers shuffling the same stacked deck with the ante raised. Randall spoke of the love that I think is the essence of Etheridge Knight's poems. And that love it's a difficult love and sometimes a violent love. I'm going to read one of my poems that sort of looks at that within the confines of my house that I grew up in, and between my parents, who are an interracial couple. It's called Vantage. Just shaved, face flawless like a waxed Cadillac. Dad peered into the mirror, picking his hair into a black globe. Knee scar from playing one guard for the Navy's hoop squad. Flat feet, stance a smidgen bow-legged. You might have been one of our neighbors who wondered how this man could actually love my mama, a white woman with Irish eyes who tilted into month-long moods. You probably heard their thunderous doors, their fight voices, or the snap of struck skin. Maybe you squinted through parted drapes to view them tussle like two tornadoes tied together. Shame you couldn't see them during certain days when he'd stop her in the calm hall, sweep a tress of hair from her neck, and kiss her shoulder freckles as if nothing ever made better sense.
All right, so what we're going to do now is just go through, and each of us is going to read about 3 poems, and then we'll open it to questions if we have time.
Okay. All right. So I'll start off. I'll read a couple from my new collection that's coming out. Maybe I might close with an old one, though. Reified melody in the architecture. The sky will unfold in the morning. One sparrow zigzag interrupts light, muting its infant song. The city will awaken to car engines, diesel brakes, machinery filling the air, a triangle of clatter igniting an electric. Rows of brownstones often carry vibrations, but vibrations often refute, or maybe narration is a lie. And perhaps wind too doesn't hum singing like a lark. Peonies never grew here. Angelo will skip to school with opal mouth to grasp hope, but broken glass will shatter into urine. The rank odor spoiling utopia lost in today's good gospel. Camellias and rotties have drooped out of sight. Wino Joe remains invisible underneath the crumbling front steps of a vacant house. The sky will swell into infinite sheets of cerulean, time erased in the breeze. No one sees Joe nursing a singular flower. Wild iris rose, red wine trickles down his throat where flutes sing. A frail shadow puppet railing against dawn. Homeless Harry stands atop the same crumbling steps, contemplating differences between dawn and sunset. In his eyes, time is a riddle. Little Marie awakens beneath pine slats, freshly sanded floors, exposed brick, beveled glass spreads her face sienna, receding from a dream. She will not know change slowly blotting out the forgotten, hanging to a counterfeit rainbow. Struggle stays hidden in daytime traffic, stories unrecognizable, time moving, and etc., etc. And this one is in the year of our Lord, circa 1840, and just a little context. It's basically takes its premise from the Amistad, which was, moored in New London for, when it came in. And I had to do this project for the Connecticut Freedom Trail, and the U.S. Custom House was my spot. And this is where this event took place. And what I always find interesting about the Amistad is that the captain of the naval vessel had a choice to make. He could return these prisoners over to the New York side, and they could have gone free. However, in Connecticut, slavery was still on the law books, and if you confiscated something of like this, you would receive the bounty, meaning that all of those men would have been his property. And 44 men at that time in history were worth $450 a piece, which is probably almost $500,000 now, maybe, or something like that. So it's really about that. But anyway, so a little context. In the year of our Lord, circa 1840, the Eon, formerly the Amistad, set sail from New London, Connecticut. A sight never to see somebody once saw. Finely peeled for cargo, draped around melanin men, crepe and calico, but some nude. Broken branches swaying in the breeze, bodies they were. How odd the daylight at half-mast, no valid flag flew. A nation above deck, pitch dark, anarchy, fore and aft at the riverbank's edge, overlooking splintered reeds, wooden houses quaint. Seagulls frozen plumb between morning fog, no one notices, illusions thought some. What audacity, what if Amistad means friendship? Shall we befriend another? Human always difficult to propagate as truth as is. It's the question curled tight into clenched fists, which became a why not thing of intrigue here. Untrouble a schooner slicing the mist, brilliant cane knives raised, steady now. Along a lag tide, menial wakes, almost river bottom, the keel even and a drag of sludge against dawn steel. The schooner's hull, but not forgotten, its breath. Amistad, not the eon held chattel. They had been men, once before being resold, remanacled, reshipped, relanded, retried, reimagined. Mende said, to own man is illogical. What lexicon shall we speak coherent of trial cadences and of gavel sound and decision spoke? Opposite a square stern, hold strong the bowsprit. Canada geese cry taken without consent, erasure in the renaming just above the esplanade, along the shoreline, a U.S. custom house in the year of our Lord, circa 1840. Today begins in earnest or paradoxical, out of memory's throat, angelic but devilish. Steering wind by the lee in the wet well, a saga. One day maybe salt cod, mackerel, coming down, soft rain, on the river, through the fog, soft rain. So I end with one from my first book, which it's one that I always like. And it's sort of a what they call a coming of age poem. And it sort of talks about me being, a little boy in Birmingham. And, as a little boy, when you're in 8th grade, you gotta get your walk together. I had to try to figure out how my walk was gonna do so I can impress the girls, So I just practiced like how I was gonna walk in school. And so that was, no, serious. I'm so serious. So this poem talks about when I was in school one time and I saw the perfect walk from this guy named Pocket Knife. So, Pocket Knife. That's a whole nother story. The ideology of the lean. I'm thinking to myself, Superfly. The first time I see Pocket Knife bend the corner between history and algebra class, almost hugging brick wall with his right shoulder, the stringent sway of his left arm like a well-oiled piece of machinery in search of a brace to propel his young blood strut. Although his strides are not long, each time he thrusts the bow of his leg, drag pigeon-toed feet forward, the circular crack of space reveals speaks of contempt, a trait that will always keep him unchained. So I emulate his defiance, practicing in front of full-length mirrors everywhere I can. Perfect my own variation of the lean until it feels natural, and I can express my entire belief system in a walk. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna follow suit and also read I guess not a coming-of-age poem, but a have-come-of-age poem. So this is a grown man looking back. When I was younger, I used to play basketball. Not very well, but I tried. But still, I had it in my mind, like a lot of us did, that we would grow up to be Lakers. You Laker fans? Yeah, not so much. Okay. I mean, what's Connecticut's pro team? Oh, yo, just joking. All right. All right, practice the fadeaways. On a deserted playground in late day sun, my palms dusted black, dribbling a worn leather ball behind my back, this loneliness echoes from the handball courts nearby. Nearly all the markings, free throw lane, sideline, center circle, rub to nothing. A crack in the earth cuts across the schoolyard, jagged as a scar on a choir boy's cheek. 20 years ago, I ran this very court with 9 other wannabe ballers. We'd steal through peeled chain links or hop the gate to get here, our blacktop Eden. One boy, who had a funny pigeon-toed set shot and a voice full of church bells, sang spirituals every time he made a basket. The other boys humming along, laughing, high fives flying down the court. And a boy we called the Sandman, for how he put you to sleep with his shoulder fake a drop step, over 6 feet tall in the 10th grade, smooth talker with an itch for older guys' girlfriends. One Sunday morning, they found him stabbed to death outside the Motel 6. Pockets untouched, bills folded neatly against his beautiful, cooling thigh. And downtown Ricky Brown, whose family headed west when he was 2, but still called himself a New Yorker, who never pulled from less than 30 feet out and could bank shots blindfolded. He went to Grambling, drove himself crazy with conspiracy theories and liquor, was last seen roaming the French Quarter, shoeless, babbling about the Illuminati's 666 ways to enslave the populace. At 16, I discovered Venice Beach, with its 1,000 bodybuilders, roller skates, and red thong bikinis. I would stand on the sidelines and watch the local ball players, leaping and hollering quicksilver giants, run and gun, already grown into their man bodies, funkadelic rising from a boombox in the sand. Now, all I hear are chain nets chiming as I sink one fadeaway after another, the backboard, the pole, throwing a long shadow across the cracked black asphalt. What the nets want must be this caress, this stillness stretching along every avenue, over high school gymnasiums and deserted playgrounds, and the ambulance drivers drifting into naps back at the station house. What the boys who ran these courts wanted was a lob pass, high enough to pull them into the sky, something they could catch in both hands and hang from, long enough for someone to snap a photograph to hold them there, skybound, risen. And Randall mentioned earlier one of Etheridge's poems called The Idea of Ancestry. When I was living in Chicago a few years ago, I think it was 2008, 2009, a cousin of mine came to visit me, and I hadn't seen her in about 15 years. So the last time I saw her, she was about you guys' age, 30 years old now, right? Or at least back then. And we, sat down and just caught up on a lot of things. So this poem comes out of that. And anybody in here speak Spanish? Yeah. Sin vergüenza, what does that mean? No? You don't speak that good. Okay. Sin vergüenza means without shame. All right. So this poem's called Sin vergüenza, and you see that coming up throughout the poem. All right. Sin vergüenza. The years spread between us like the black between stars. My cousin and me in a Chicago bar, meeting for the first time in 15 years. Business travel, doing the work blood hasn't been able to. Though she doesn't believe me when I tell her, she looks the same now as she did as a teen. She tugs at my graying beard, rubs my bald head, says I've gotten old. When she was a toddler, I fed my cousin fish sticks, French fries, red Kool-Aid with too much sugar. I would read to her from oversized picture books, stories where the pretty princess always endured the witch, children escaped, the line between good and wicked straight as a wand. Now, I buy her booze, lots of it. We start a tab, grab a corner table, realize we now have between us one dead grandfather, 2 dead fathers, cancer claiming one, cirrhosis the other, alcoholics both, 2 bruised mothers who no longer speak, and for each of us, a fistful of missteps and missed steps. We sit and drink sin vergüenza, without shame, showing each other scars, some fresh, some familiar, everyone our own. If we were a storybook, I would read us aloud. Let the world wonder how it is in these stories. The damsels become dragons, apples swallow villages, and kings sprout horns. I would read us loudly, sin vergüenza, because shame is a luxury lost on the wretched. Battle-weary dragon slayers, knights who know to count each survival, every arrow that pierced and poisoned but did not kill, all the falls, the hatchets, and the hexes, count survivals and call them blessings. Cousin, though you have been damsel, tonight you too are dragon. Relentless fire, insistent breath, bidding me remember, remember, remember. Sin vergüenza, you tell me what you remember of the houses where you nightmared, the midnight scent of honeysuckle, baby powder, blood. You tell me without shame, and I am almost ashamed to tell you how 15 years ago I ran away to find my own dragons, castles, a damsel needing rescue. How it has taken me each season and every mile walked to arrive at this table here tonight, to drink from this very glass, to learn, after all, that my castle was fantasy, damsel, memory, and dragon was a place called home. We touch glasses and you tell me in other tongues ways you've learned to say salute. But for the shaken ice, the clinking rims sound like the storybook signal to turn the page. I tell this story sin vergüenza. Me and my baby cousin in a Bucktown bar, throwing back glasses of Grey Goose, Hennessy, Bacardi. We drop quarters into the slots of a pool table, snatch cues off the rack like battle axes. We laugh at the aches our bodies have become, girl cousins circling the table on a bum left foot, boy cousins crackling scapula, bones creaking across the green. It's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning, which is to say the place is empty, except for some locals chatting up the bartender, the anchorman on TV mouthing wars and wars to come. Outside, the leaves curl into themselves like the old man sleeping in the door jamb, an overcoat wrapping him against the wind, because, after all, it is October and this is Chicago. We are far past drunk. Family circling the table, each other. Someone's stolen the triangle, so we gather stripes, solids by hand. One of us watching while the other one breaks. Thank you. And I'll read one last one. I'll make it a short one. This is called The Prisoner's Wife. I had a cousin who went away, and he served, I think, in the same prison that Etheridge served. And he used to write me letters every now and then. And one of the letters, he talked about, him getting out and things he wanted to do and things he wanted to experience. And one of the things he wanted to experience was intimacy, yeah? And he was talking about his first experience with a woman out of prison and how it scared him because he had been so conditioned by prison to just react violently at any touch that he was scared what would happen the first time he lied down with a woman. And that stuck with me for years and years and years. And I was trying to write that poem and could never write it until I actually tried to write it from the woman's point of view. So this is a persona poem called The Prisoner's Wife. To touch him, where? Scapula, vertebrae? I have to let him hear my voice first. Hum something he knows. Make sure he's awake. Been this way since he's back in the world. I have to whisper soft as a child. First time I reached for him in the dark, I learned. Like his first night home. In that world, I imagined the shanks and showers, bigger men, if they touched him in the dark. I've learned not to ask. What fingers may have grazed his skin is not for me to know. Let me run this man a bath. That he's even here is a miracle. 7 years I've waited to glaze his fingers, his skin, to sing his name until he learns it right. My risen black Lazarus. Here, 7 summers still intact. Tonight, watch these nails cut wings into his back. Thank you.
Nowadays, so many of us have iPhones and Droids and whatever kind of fancy machinery you connect with people through. In the old days, there were these things called pagers. So I wrote an ode to pagers.
You might want to give them a little context.
You guys ever see a pager when you're really, really tiny?
They're about,
They still exist in
they're like this big.
About this big.
Yeah.
They used to beep, and then eventually they began vibrating, right? Ode to the pager. Your earliest versions beeped like microwaves, or retreating trucks, or hospital monitors. When cell phones cost more than mortgages, you clipped to our belt loops, our pocket lips, our book bag straps. Fueled on Energizer alkaline, your skinny screen delivered numbers of souls hankering for a word with us. We would bum someone's touchstone or clatter a quarter into a payphone, ear suctioned to greasy receiver. If our lovers intercepted forbidden pages while we slept, we woke to find you drowned in toilet water. Your display blotted opaque, your heart a cracked cask of ink. Without you, we miss parties. Managers curious if we'd accept an extra shift. Younger sisters caught in downpours across town. Parents who hadn't heard our inflections in too long. Anyone who poked buttons and hoped we would be somewhere heeding you. Rectangular messenger, a buzz as a matchbox of wasps. Unfortunately, when you're young, especially very young, adolescent, you don't appreciate a lot of the things around you, a lot of the people that contribute greatly to your well-being and your future. This is a poem about one of the best teachers I ever had, looking back on how amazing he was and how much of a knucklehead we were for not showing him more love. It's called 8th grade grammar. Mr. Bernard's bald scalp glinted as if slanted glass. With a bullet of chalk, his hand scurried the board, writing what we were to recite. Jonathan went to the grocery store to buy apples for Michael, his friend. From an adjacent desk, Damon leaned to me, whispering, "He always writing on that board. Crazy." Mr. Bernard heard, loosened his necktie, and lettered the next sentence. Every morning, he prodded and spurred us through syntax exercises, punctuation drills, patrolling our haze-eyed ranks. We bolted away as soon as June delivered its pride crates of lengthened days, Tupac crackling from the black foam of our earphones, all our school papers trashed like meaningless mail. How would we have known to merit a man who wore inexpensive slacks, dense spectacle lenses, a man given 9 months in city-bought books that smelled of stale glue, a man assigned to somehow recouple the muddled boxcars of our clauses, to re-meter our words so the world might better hear us. And I'm going to end with a poem to my dad, and it touches on the negotiation between males of color within a family not really understanding how to communicate their love with one another, except for those very, very sparse moments where things kind of make sense and we appreciate each other. It's called KISS. Saving money the summer before moving to New York, I painted houses during days, nights in a restaurant kitchen hosing dishes, loading them into a steel washer that gusted steam until 2 a.m. Once, when I came home, my back and neck bidding for bed, asleep on the couch lay Dad. Flicker from the muted TV was the room's lone light, but I could see his face fine, broad nose, thick cheeks, holding a glow as he breathed. In 5 hours, I would wake, ride in the crew truck to the assigned site, gallon buckets and step ladders chattering over road bumps, axles clanging like prongs of a struck fork. Still, I stood and stared at Dad, a man who poured 4 years into the Navy during war, who worked worse jobs for shorter pay than me, whose hands have blackened fixing cars that quit no matter how many replaced parts. Above our house, clouds polished the moon as they passed. Dad wriggled, body pain or threatening dreams. What else could I do but bend down slow and touch once my lips to his brown brow?
All right. So, do we have time for questions, maybe? About 10 minutes? Okay. So we'll open up to questions. Raise your hand. If you have a phone, like do that so we can see you. And then we'll call on you.
Their phones are put away.
Okay, right here?
Yeah.
If it makes you feel any better to reach my father, I have to page him.
2 birds with 1 stone.
Nice. Awesome. Can y'all see?
Yep, right over here.
Can I hear the titles of your books one more time?
Huh?
The titles.
The title of my books are The Definition of Place, The Lingua Franca of 9th Street, Roxbury, which is a nonfiction chapbook, and I have a new one coming out in February called Pitch Dark Anarchy, which I was reading from today.
Show the cover.
Oh, it's covered right here.
The name of my book, I only have one. He has like 8. I'm trying to get there. It's called Up Jump the Boogie. This is a worn copy, the same one I've been reading from for the past few years, but it looks nicer in person.
Oh, special service announcement. It just was announced. John Murillo was the recipient of a National Endowment of the Arts Fellowship in Poetry. Very huge deal. So can y'all give him a round of applause?
Thank you.
They don't come easy.
You are also a former recipient of that, are you not?
I am.
You're next.
Yep.
No, you're next to get the grant.
No, yeah. Oh, no question.
My book is called Neighborhood Register, and it's on Cobb & Carey Press out of New Jersey.
And it's really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
If you if you ever want to learn in writing odes, that's the book to get right there. Odes.
Yes. Questions?
How do you guys know each other? How did you meet and start performing together?
It's my dad. This is my son. No, I'm joking. No, we met actually. The nucleus is Cave Canem, right? For those of you who don't know, Cave Canem is a workshop/retreat for African American poets. Marcus and I actually met before that, though. We met in grad school at New York University. We're both in the MFA program. In 2006, that was their first year at Cave Canem, my last year. And then with Dwayne Betts, who I wish he was here, he was our suite mate. And we just got together and just realized we had so much in common. Just, you know, you just click with people.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah.
We just clicked, and then we started talking about, you know, we found out your influences and things that you have in common. And within the four of us, you know, Etheridge was a common thing that all of us, you know, had. And so, you know, one of the things with what we do also is it's sort of a humbling thing too when you share your work with 3 other people, and it sort of keeps you grounded in what you're trying to do. Because I love to listen to them. You know, I can just sit here and be a listener, you know, not even a reader. And so that makes it a lot easier when you really respect the people that you know, sort of like do this thing with. Because we each do our own thing individually, but we come together to do this because we like to hang with each other. You know? Yeah.
Can we see your walk?
Not with the camera on.
I'd like to mention too, we talk about the titles of our books. Dwayne Betts, he has 2 books. One's called A Question of Freedom. It's a memoir, and he has a poetry collection called Shaheed Reads His Own Poem.
Yeah, you know, Dwayne's Question of Freedom won the NAACP Image Award. So he's doing good work, and he just couldn't be here, but definitely sends his best wishes.
Yeah. We got time for maybe one more.
One more.
And Marcus will give you $1 if you ask the next question. All right. Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I'm very, very moved by all 3 of your work, and I think it's very incredible to have men come up and read in an open way, like you're saying, and model that. And I'm moved because none of you seem like you had the perfect life. And
I did.
I feel like any of you were saying you had the perfect life, but yet you're bringing out the beauty and the power of what there is in all the moments and sharing that. And to me, that's like so moving, and I really appreciate you coming.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.